My name is Eric Watson. Having grown up in Utah and spent most of my life here, I served an LDS mission when I was 19 in Mexico City. I returned back in 99, and right after 9/11 happened, me, like many other, pretty awesome young men and women, we raised our hand and wanted to join in the military to get into the fight. I was an intel counterintelligence analyst. I was able to get my first deployment to Iraq in 2008. Eventually, I got deployed to Afghanistan a couple times as well. When I got out of the military in 2012, had you asked me at that time that I was separating for the military, you went on a couple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Do you have any PTSD? Do you have any trauma from that? Do you have any kind of those invisible wounds that a lot of us veterans carry? I probably would have explained it away that I didn't. We got shot at a lot. We got rocketed. We lost people. Being a counterterrorism analyst, I was directly responsible for capture kill missions. And I would have told you that I had kind of dealt with that in a healthy way and I was just moving on with my life. So for 8 years, I was just kind of functioning with a lot of compartmentalization. I became really good about compartmentalizing a lot of these experiences that I had and that really impact me, and just kind of stuck them in a corner in a little teeny box and locked them up, threw the key away, and just kind of forgot about them. COVID had just hit. It was early 2020, and my dad starts getting sick and we can't figure out what's going on. And so after sending him to a bunch of specialists around the country, we found out that he had ALS. Typically ALS, in most men, you have 3 to 5 years of life expectancy. But unfortunately, he started going downhill pretty quickly, and I knew that I had to get back home, back to Utah. And I took 3 days to drive across the country and kind of slept in my car for the most part. And I got back to my parents' house and I moved in and was the primary caretaker for my dad for the next 7 months. My dad, Rick, passed on August 8th of 2020. This was the perfect time, apparently, for all of that compartmentalized experiences and trauma that I had went through in the military and during my deployments. All of that started to bubble to the surface. I thought I had moved past that. I didn't have to worry about that. I dodged that bullet. But the experience of watching my dad start to lose all of his functions just bubbled to the surface, all of these unprocessed emotions. I'm normally a very put together person. I'm very structured and disciplined, and things started to get really difficult. My emotional and mental health was a little bit all over the place. I was trying to disconnect a lot and separate myself, but needing to be there for my dad and feeling guilt that I couldn't be there for him the way I wanted to. It was a really difficult time for me. I wasn't really sure how to go about it. I thought about therapy. I had done therapy before during my divorce, years earlier, and it just didn't really work for me. So a good friend of mine just so happened that the week before had actually sat in a psychedelic ceremony, and he knew what the hard time I was going through, and he just came over and said, Eric, you should probably take a look at this. I think it's really helped me process some childhood trauma that I didn't even know how to get through. I found a lot of value in it. I think you should really consider what a plant medicine ceremony could offer you. And at that point, I had no other real options that I felt were going to really make an impact. And I had no idea what a psychedelic ceremony was like. My perceptions being in the military and having worked with, that type of organization, lots of special forces customers, lots of very tip of the spear type people, I would never ever consider doing a psychedelic plant medicine ceremony before. And preparing to lose your dad will make you consider options that you typically otherwise maybe would not consider. So I said yes to that, and that night was really intense. I was in a fire for 8 hours processing everything from childhood stuff to my divorce to my deployments to preparing for my dad to die. It's like I had a new set of eyeballs for 8 hours that I could look back on my life and forward on my life in a way that my typical conscious state it's not available. That 8 hours of that ceremony, it was 36 years of therapy. When I drove home the next day and I just laid in my bed, I thought about the stuff I went through while deployed in the military and a lot of the lives lost, lives that I was responsible for. I was able to feel the depth of all of that emotion and then release it. Nobody told me that that is what a plant can do, that it can allow you to experience some of the hardest things that you've gone through in your life, being able to feel it and then fully release it. It took me several months just to integrate that experience. Even after I left that ceremony, for weeks and months later, it was still teaching me, showing me places where I can show up more authentic to myself and to the people that I care about in my life. So, plant medicine has become kind of my evolution, my spiritual practice, my leveling up. As I was doing a lot of my inner work, I realized, the last almost 20 years of my life have been about war. And I remember sitting on the beach in California with my fiance and asking her, what do I do next? Like, all I've known is war since, 2002. She just believes in me and she just encouraged me to trust in my own intuition. And 90 days later, I purchased a functional medicine health clinic where we're starting now to do deep healing work with chronically ill patients. We need to help the nervous system of a veteran to get out of fight or flight. We need to detox their body, because when you're deployed to these difficult places, you're exposed to toxins. I came back with heavy metal poisoning. I came back with, a bunch of different toxins that I had to get out of my system. So we're developing these protocols, but the experience that I have had with the healing and the awareness through plant medicines and through ceremonies and through rituals, I have found so much healing in my life that has impacted me as not just a business owner or not just a veteran, but like as a dad, as a brother, as a friend. I show up in my life very differently because of my experiences and my teachings that I've received from some of these plants like psilocybin and ayahuasca, MDMA. We need these tools to be available for our veterans and our first responders. These are people that have stood up and answered the call with bravery and with courage. I mean, these are our heroes in our society, and they need rest. They need tools to come back home to themselves, to come back and integrate back into their families, to their society. We want to make sure that these plant medicines and these substances are treated with respect and done safely and with good efficacy. This population of veterans and first responders are the ones that need these tools the most. We need our warriors to reintegrate back into our society. And right now, we have a suicide epidemic with our veterans. Between 22 and 26 veterans a day have taken their own lives. These are safe and effective tools that many of them could be using right now to try to curb this very large and serious issue for our heroes. They need these tools. I'm happy to be here to share my personal story and to offer some safe places for veterans to come for healing, because I know how it's impacted my life.